Hey everybody, Feng here again with this week's Design Cinema, and we're going to be focusing on character, I guess more of like a character rendering technique this week versus character design, which we'll talk about maybe in a future tutorial. So I'm going to try to keep this casual as I can because I have a slight cold today as well due to the crazy weather here in Singapore where it's always hot outside and cold inside. You tend to run into some cold once in a while. So anyways, here's the image that I'm loaded up. I'm just going to scroll through this real quick so you kind of see. This again is a live demo done in front of the class. So all these are done within an hour, maybe 2 hours at most design. So this one's a little bit more elaborate in class because we started out with absolutely nothing. Which I'll show you guys as well. So let's turn all these layers off. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, there you go. So here's the original. Let's turn on the background too. Okay, and that. Boom. So we start with a completely blank canvas, and we have to do a drawing. And before I even got to this clean drawing, you can see this underneath this is a looser one. So I'm gonna turn this layer way up. So here's the original sketch of this character. So we want to just do, it's a demo about character rendering versus character design. But in any case, we always try to make the design somewhat interesting as well. He's not the most craziest unique thing in the world, but at least it's something that's quite interesting for us to paint. So what I usually do is I start with this really rough layer, just sketch away, get your major shapes down and all the elements there. But keep in mind of perspective. That's very important. Once this drawing is at this stage where the design is somewhat controlled. Let me get to a red thing here. Okay. All right. So we have all the major elements in there. What I do is I just make the opacity quite low, something like 10%. All right, so you can sort of see it. If I zoom in, you can sort of see it. And I just do an overlay of the layer. So I could draw another one on top of the layer, above the layer with a rough drawing, right? So below this layer, here's the rough. Above it is my clean line drawing, and that's all it is. It's very simple. It's kind of like back in the old school days of tracing your original drawing. So it's doing the same thing, it's a lot faster in digital. I made a new layer here to show you guys the importance of perspective. For me, a character design is the same as doing a product or a vehicle or an environment. They're all products. They're all objects in 3D space. So I really don't care if it's a character or anything. There's no category to what we do. Majority of my friends, we do the same thing. We treat them all the same. They're all 3D objects. So in this way, if we look at it, there is a perspective in here. All right, let me draw that a little bit more straight. That follows this kind of camera, right? With the horizon being somewhere right here, which is natural. So this is where a human will most likely be looking at him. Right, about this big. So if that's the case, when I look down, imagine your head is right here, about this big. When I look down, I see the top of his feet. Very natural as I'm looking down. If I start looking up, I start seeing the bottom of his neck. I start seeing the bottom of his chin, but I don't see the top of this because of his head, because you are a little bit below him, right? The horizon is about here. And that's where we place the camera to make him feel a little bit bigger. Right? Instead of drawing a character in side view, we always use perspective. You see how it naturally looks when you put like this human scale next to it? It feels right. Yeah, it feels like this guy's big, simply because we use a correct camera. And two, we have to make sure anatomy-wise, perspective-wise, these shapes are all correct. Okay, so let me turn off some of these layers or reduce them down. So this right now is at 60, so let's remember that so we don't forget it. Right. Again, we have the perspective going through this. You gotta keep in mind, these are all 3D objects. These things eventually will be built by somebody in the art department who's going to make this into a 3D character, right? Either it's a sculpture 3D or it's a 3D model in a computer software. It doesn't really matter, but what matters is that you as a designer gotta make sure this thing actually could feel 3D. So if he has a shoulder ball joint here, his arms come down here, that follows perspective and relatively on the other side as this, right? This comes down to here where you have his hand. This comes down here, you have his hand, right? This is a spine that goes across like so. That spine will continue down, go like this to form the little tail. Here's his leg, got a joint in here. Here's the other leg, right? The pelvis, the joint here. That'll come down, the knee. The knee will connect to here, forming the feet. The spine will continue down, forming the tail. that you see here, right? So there's a continuous flow here of the spine with all their joints. So let me zoom down here so you can see. I keep forgetting Camtasia. I have it cropped the top off the screen here. Right, so here's our fingers, and of course all these have joints inside them. All the fingers have joints. Right, so this is the way I treat a lot of my character designs. I treat them pretty much like a any other object. You know, this could be a building, this could be a vehicle, this could be a prop. It doesn't really matter. This is all about form development, right? A character is just a bunch of forms arranged in a more organic way, I guess, right? Instead of a hard straight line, you tend to get a little bit more softer lines on a character. That's all. I mean, all the forms, the cylinders that's happening here, like this big arm here is just a big giant sphere connected to a giant cylinder. Let me draw that with a different color so you can see. Right, this is his arm here, followed by another cylinder into another cylinder like this. So when you think of objects or characters this way, you can pretty much draw and design anything. You're not limited by the subject matter. It's not like, oh, I'm the character guy or I'm a vehicle guy. You know, when you get onto a lot of these projects, especially working on some of these film things where the art department is quite small, they tend to make the designers do everything. You know, and you have to be able to keep up. You can't be like, oh, I can't do vehicles, or no, I don't do characters. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't care. They're paying a designer to give them whatever they want to see. So the clients want designs. So you can't be like, oh, I only do this. I specialize in this, and that works in some studios. But you know, in general, the more stuff you can do, the more diverse your job will be, and it's more fun too. So you're not just stuck doing the same thing over and over and over. Right? All right. So this is sort of his. I guess form development thing that I just did here, so you guys can see where this drawing comes from. That you can see that in how it works, and if you flip it, it works as well. So if I turn off this layer, right, he still reads as a 3D element, and that's very important to have in a character, and make sure the perspective is out there, these forms are there, because not only will the drawing feel 3D, it also gives you all the information you need for rendering. So later when we start putting light on this guy, we know that okay, these are, let me get another color here. We know that, oh, these are cylinders, right? So if these are cylinders and light is coming from upper right, for example, then we know that, okay, this surface will see the hot light face down. This will not. Maybe here we'll see the hot light and then face down. This will see the reverse bounce light from the floor, because we know all the forms. Here's a head, so the hot highlight will go around here, go around here. This is all below the light, so we can't see. All this will be in shadow. So it tells you, because it's a form. It's a 3D form, and 3D form, just like cylinders and cubes, react in certain conditions under lighting, right? So this big, broad design allow you to get a lot of foundations in your brain before you start anything, you know. So, all right, let me ditch this layer. I'll just keep it on for now. Let's turn on our line layer again. Let's put that back to about 60, which we had it earlier. Okay, I don't leave these 100% because we're gonna paint this stuff up in a bit. And I actually leave the under layer on as well. It kind of gives me some free textures. If I zoom in, you can sort of see it. If I turn this layer on right there, you can see that's the rough drawing from before. Okay. So that way, it's just some free textures. You barely see it, but I like drawings that have that carries through the first generation. And what I mean by that is, you know, when I used to sketch, well, I think a lot of you guys as well, myself included, we have like, let me just write it here. We have the sketch phase, right, where you do like a very loose drawing, and then you generally overlay, or you call cleanup, right? It's just called overlay. Let me write this better. Terrible handwriting. Overlay, yeah. So this is where you, whatever that blob was, you clean into a cleaner blob, right? And then this could also be called cleanup.